Something has shifted, not gradually, not through the slow grind of diplomacy or the usual dance of press releases and back-channel noise. No, this shift happened the way the most consequential moments in history always do. Quietly, in the dark, at altitude, at speed, and without a single public announcement. 3 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers departed Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri approximately 36 hours ago. We know this not because the Pentagon told us, they never do, but because of what we can piece together. Tanker assets repositioned over the Indian Ocean, satellite imagery showing unusual activity at Diego Garcia, and signals intelligence that frankly should not be this loud if this were just another exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a drill. And tonight, I'm going to walk you through exactly what is happening, why it's happening now, and what comes next. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will understand this crisis in a way that almost no one in your circle does. To understand where we are tonight, you have to understand the Iran that exists right now. Not the Iran of 5 years ago, not the Iran of the nuclear deal era, the Iran of today. For the past 18 months, the Islamic Republic has been fracturing from the inside. It started with the economy, inflation running at over 40%, the rial, already battered by decades of sanctions, collapsing further after a series of miscalculations by the central bank. The middle class, what remains of it, has been watching their savings evaporate in real time. People who once had comfortable lives in Tehran are now making impossible choices: medicine or food, heating or rent. But an economic crisis alone does not topple a government with the Revolutionary Guard at its disposal. What changed the calculus was the street. 3 months ago, a protest movement erupted in Isfahan. Not students this time, not young women in headscarves defiantly cut short, though they were there too, but workers, industrial workers, the people the regime had always claimed to represent. The symbolism was devastating for Supreme Leader Khamenei's inner circle. When the working class turns, the ideological foundation of the revolution doesn't just crack, it splinters. The IRGC cracked down. Hard. We're talking live fire in the streets of Avaz. We're talking mass arrests in Mashhad. Human rights organizations, the few that still have people on the ground, reported over 400 dead in the first 6 weeks. Western capitals issued statements. Nobody moved. And then came the incident that changed everything. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago, an explosion tore through the Fordow fuel enrichment plant. Deep underground, the kind of facility that was built specifically to survive an airstrike, reinforced with hundreds of feet of rock, hidden in a mountain near Qom, the spiritual heart of the Islamic Republic. The explosion was not a strike, it was sabotage. Someone got inside, someone with extraordinary access, extraordinary patience, and extraordinary nerve. Tehran blamed Israel. Israel said nothing, which in this context means everything. The regime, already under pressure from within, needed an external enemy more than it needed oxygen. Within 48 hours, the IRGC launched a volley of ballistic missiles toward a U.S. forward operating position in Iraq. 3 American service members were wounded, 1 critically. Washington's response was measured, publicly. Privately, the situation entered a different phase entirely. That is the world that led us here. Now let's talk about what is actually moving and why it matters. The B-2 Spirit is not just a bomber. It is a message written in stealth technology and thermonuclear-capable payload. When you deploy a B-2, you are not sending a signal that you are ready to fight. You are sending a signal that you are ready to end something. That distinction matters enormously in the language of military deterrence. There are only 20 B-2s in existence. 20. The United States has spent the better part of 4 decades and somewhere north of $45 billion developing and maintaining this fleet. You do not move these aircraft casually. You do not position them as a bluff. History has shown us that when the B-2 goes wheels up toward a crisis zone, kinetic action follows. Diego Garcia, the British Indian Ocean Territory atoll that serves as America's most critical power projection hub in the region, has reportedly received not just the bombers themselves, but the full support infrastructure that a sustained strike campaign requires. Ground crews, weapons specialists, the particular category of personnel who handle what the military calls Massive Ordnance Penetrators, the GBU-57, a 30,000-pound bunker-busting bomb designed for one specific purpose: destroying hardened, deeply buried facilities. Facilities like Fordo, like Natanz, like the Imam Ali missile base outside Kermanshah. Let me be direct with you about what this means from a strategic standpoint. The United States military does not preposition bunker busters and stealth bombers simultaneously as a diplomatic gesture. This is not coercive signaling in the traditional sense, where you show capability to invite a negotiation. This posture suggests a decision tree has already been navigated. Certain conditions have already been met. What the planners are waiting for now is either a trigger event or a final authorization from the National Command Authority, the President and Secretary of Defense, to execute. The question I keep coming back to, and the one that should keep you up tonight, is this: what is the trigger? Here is where it gets genuinely complicated. And I say this as someone who has spent years studying Iranian decision-making. The regime in Tehran is not irrational. I know that flies in the face of how they are often portrayed in Western media, as fanatics driven purely by ideology, disconnected from consequence. That characterization is lazy, and it is dangerous, because it leads to catastrophic miscalculation on our side. The Iranian leadership has always played a long game. They've absorbed sanctions. They've absorbed assassinations of their nuclear scientists. They've absorbed the Stuxnet cyber attack that destroyed centrifuges at Natanz without a single missile being fired. They have shown a remarkable capacity to absorb punishment and survive. That is not irrationality. That is a particular kind of strategic patience. But here is where tonight is different from every previous crisis in the last 2 decades. The leadership is divided. My sources, and I want to be careful here because the situation is fluid, suggest that there is a faction within the IRGC leadership that is pushing for an escalatory response to the B-2 positioning. Launch against U.S. naval assets in the Gulf, mine the Strait of Hormuz, activate Hezbollah and Lebanon for a simultaneous multi-front pressure campaign. The logic being, if we are going to be struck, make the cost of that strike so catastrophic for American interests that Washington blinks first. There is another faction, quieter but not without influence, that is looking at the internal situation and recognizing that a full-scale American military campaign right now, when the streets are already burning, when the IRGC is stretched thin managing domestic dissent, could be existential for the regime. Not existential in the "we might lose some assets" sense. Existential in the "this government does not survive" sense. That internal debate is right now the most important conversation happening anywhere on Earth. More important than anything being said in the Situation Room in Washington. More important than the emergency session of the UN Security Council that will almost certainly be called in the next 24 to 48 hours. Because the outcome of that debate determines whether we are looking at a precise, time-limited American strike campaign, painful for Iran, survivable for the regime, or a catastrophic regional war that reshapes the Middle East for the next generation. No crisis exists in isolation, and this one least of all. Russia is watching. Russia has been watching very carefully. Moscow's relationship with Tehran has deepened considerably over the past 3 years. Iranian drones on Ukrainian battlefields, Russian technical assistance flowing in the other direction. A direct American military strike on Iran creates a significant problem for the Kremlin. Do you defend an ally and risk direct confrontation with the United States? Or do you stay quiet and watch a partner get degraded? That is not a comfortable position for any power to be in. China is watching too. Beijing's posture will be characterized by public condemnation of American unilateralism, paired with very private inaction. China needs stable oil prices. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of globally traded oil. Any disruption to that waterway is not an abstract geopolitical problem for Beijing. It is an immediate domestic economic problem. The Chinese government has spent 30 years telling its population that its economic model delivers prosperity. Fuel shortages and energy price spikes do not support that narrative. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, find themselves in an extraordinarily uncomfortable position. On one hand, a degraded Iran with a weakened IRGC is not an outcome they lose sleep over. On the other hand, they are within range of Iranian ballistic missiles. Their oil infrastructure is within range of Iranian ballistic missiles. The Abqaiq oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia, the single most important oil installation on the planet, has already been attacked once by Iranian proxies. They are not eager for a rematch at a moment of maximum Iranian desperation. Israel, of course, is the actor whose intentions everyone is reading and second-guessing simultaneously. Jerusalem has been the most vocal advocate for decisive action on Iran's nuclear program for 20 years. But military planners in Tel Aviv are also acutely aware that a regional war fought simultaneously against Hezbollah, Hamas remnants, Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq, and potentially Iranian missiles directly, while the Israeli military is already stretched, is a scenario that carries its own profound risks. The board is crowded, the stakes are total, and at the center of it all, right now, those three B-2s are somewhere over water, flying at altitude, systems cold, waiting. I want to be honest with you about something. Anyone who tells you they know exactly what happens next in this scenario is either lying or deluded. The variables are too numerous. The human element, the decisions being made right now by exhausted, frightened, proud, ideological human beings on multiple sides, is too unpredictable. But I can give you the scenarios I consider most plausible, ranked by probability as I assess it tonight. The first scenario, and the one I currently weight most heavily, is a limited, targeted American strike. 6 to 12 hours, specific military sites, missile production facilities, IRGC command infrastructure. Perhaps one or two nuclear-adjacent sites that have been on the targeting list for years. The message is calibrated. This is punishment for the Iraq attack. This is a red line reestablished. This is not regime change. The administration makes clear through back channels, probably through Omani intermediaries, as they have historically served that function, that the strikes are finite, that American ground forces are not coming, and that the next move belongs to Tehran. The second scenario is that the strikes are planned and authorized, but a last-minute diplomatic intervention, most likely via Oman or possibly through a quiet back channel involving a European intermediary, produces an Iranian commitment significant enough that Washington can stand down without appearing to blink. This has happened before. The October 2019 moment when strikes were called off against Iran after the drone shootdown. The world rarely learns about these near misses in real time. The third scenario is the one that wakes me up at 3 in the morning. The IRGC hardliners win the internal argument in Tehran. Iran strikes first, or strikes simultaneously. American naval assets take casualties. The Israeli Air Force enters the picture. The conflict expands faster than any of the political leadership on any side intended. The Strait of Hormuz is mined or blockaded. Oil moves to $180 a barrel overnight. Global markets go into freefall. And we find ourselves at the opening chapter of a conflict that none of the history books have been written about yet. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but it is a possible one. And possible, in a situation with this many nuclear-armed actors in the background and this much compressed decision-making time, is terrifying enough to warrant being named. Here is what I believe. We are at an inflection point, not a manufactured one, not a crisis that is being performed for cameras and news cycles. A real one, the kind that shows up in the opening chapters of the history books that get written decades from now, when analysts far younger than me try to explain to students how the world got from here to wherever it ends up. The B-2 positioning is real. The internal fracturing of the Iranian regime is real. The risk of miscalculation by exhausted decision makers under maximum pressure on multiple sides, that is very, very real. What happens in the next 72 hours will matter. Perhaps more than anything that has happened in this region in a generation. I've been doing this a long time. I've sat in briefing rooms and written assessments and watched crises unfold in real time. And I will tell you something that I don't say lightly. I have not seen a threat matrix that looks like this since the months before the Iraq invasion in 2003. And I was wrong about some things then. I'm trying not to be wrong about things now. Watch the tanker aircraft. Watch Diego Garcia. Watch whether the Omani foreign minister makes any unscheduled travel. Watch whether the Iranian foreign minister goes quiet or goes loud. The next move is being made right now, in rooms none of us will ever see, by people whose names most of the world will never know. And all of us, every one of us, are living with the consequences. Stay informed, stay clear-eyed, and stay ready for a world that may look very different by this time next week. This has been your analysis. I'll be back with updates as the situation develops. Note, this script is entirely fictional and created for creative, educational, and entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, operational details, and intelligence assessments depicted are invented. This does not represent real intelligence, real military operations, or real policy positions of any government.